Hello, this is Grant Hughes of Grant Hughes Investigates on YouTube. Please hit that like, share, and subscribe button. And also, when you hit the subscribe button, make sure to hit the notification bell and then select all videos. It seems to be an issue on my channel where people didn't get notified. So today's video is going to be about Jodi Arias. I don't know if you guys remember that trial back in, I think it was like 2013. And it's regarding the murder of Travisalexander by Jodi Arias back on June 4th, 2008. And a lot of crime scene photos were put out before the trial. If this trial was today, or this case was today, it would be by far the biggest case that there ever was. It would dwarf the Idaho 4 case for some unknown reason. I think it was just because there were so many images that were out there and a lot of people could speculate on this and that, and it had the same crazy wackos who thought it was some other person. The Mormon cult went after Travisalexander, etc. So it doesn't matter what case it is, there's always people out there that go the conspiracy theory route right out of the gate. So this video today is going to show you there was an exhibit, I think it was 162 or 163. It was actually number 162. So exhibit 162, and then the first part here is Jodi Arias describing what she did, and I caught her when she said, "Not the first time I went up the hall." Well, in her first in her self-defense story, there is no second time. She merely attacked Travis, shot him after running through the bathroom closet, and then she shoots him, she claims, in self-defense, and then everything else is dark after that. There isn't a second time, but she accidentally says that, and Juan Martinez didn't pick up on it and missed that opportunity. But I also show in this video this portion in animation. Now it's a little off. I had the image of the foot further down the hall, but this was early on in the case, and then eventually a book was put out by Juan Martinez, and it was much clearer, and then I was able to figure out the exact location of that image where you see Travis on his back, Jodi Arias' foot by his head and shoulder, and you see her pants with a zipper, etc. So let's take a look at this right now.
To orient ourselves, this is Mr. Alexander's head, correct?
Yes.
So you can see, look how dark and kind of hard to discern what this is. But I was still able to determine that in the background by his foot. Now that little dark spot with the tiny little light hole in it is his foot. This is a wide angle lens, so it made his foot look absolutely tiny. And in the background there is the bathroom sink.
Blood right there, right?
Yes.
And that's his foot, correct?
Yes.
And given the way that the lights are in this particular photograph, the bathroom is in this direction, correct?
Yes.
So I'm playing a video that I made a long time ago, so it already has music in the background. But here's a 3D model I made of the bedroom, and it's really accurate. It got way better after this, where I literally took the tiles that had different blood spatter patterns and put them on the floor in the correct location. Now, as you can see, I have her way down at the end of the hall here, but it's actually right next to this outlet on the ground, or on the wall just there to the left, that outlet right here. And that's about where she's actually standing, but everything else, the orientation is correct. And you see how his foot's small, very similar. See the bathroom sink in the background.
And you would agree with me that if the camera, Exhibit 249, was last seen here, do you see that?
Yes.
And things happen the way you say they happened, we now have this photograph that you were the one that moved that camera, right?
It could have been us both. I don't know, remember moving it.
But you do remember, though, that as you ran down this hallway, you were not carrying the camera with you, right?
No, not the first time I ran down the hallway.
Of course not.
Right, and she realizes, oh wait, not the first time, but my story only has one time, but Juan didn't seem to pick up on it. Not the first time, when was the other time?
You were concerned for your life, you told us, right?
Yes.
And you told us that the camera landed next to the tub, right?
Yes.
And so if this photograph was snapped at the time that we've agreed that it's snapped, and the camera, the last time you see it, is next to the tub, and then you describe what happens, that Mr. Alexander is down next to the tub, then it was you that moved that camera, right?
Objection calls for speculation. She said she doesn't remember.
Yeah, but that's ridiculous speculation. If the camera moved down there, then she put it there. Just because she can't remember, the only logical conclusion is that she put it there.
Sustained.
With regard to Mr. Alexander,
Yet it was sustained.
ma'am, the last memory that you have of him is that he was down on the ground, correct?
Yes.
And the last memory that you have of him is after you shot him, right?
Yes.
You never saw him walking around, did you?
No, I didn't.
And so if you didn't, assuming he didn't get up and walk around, and assuming you did shoot him, and assuming that the camera is where you told us that it was, then this camera, to take this photograph, had to be moved, right?
Yeah, it had to be moved.
And you would acknowledge that you did the moving, right?
Objection calls for speculation. She said over and over again she doesn't remember.
Overruled. You may answer.
Right, but here's the thing. She doesn't remember, but yet she said, not the first time I went down the hallway. That means she remembers a second time, and that would have been a perfect spot for Juan to jump in and have said, well, a minute ago you said not the first time I went down the hallway, implying there was a second. So that means that you remember a second time you went down the hallway. Can you explain now, does that then mean that you moved the camera there on that second trip?
Only under that theory. That would be right.
Well, you see him right there, ma'am? Mr. Alexander?
Yes.
No, take a look at it.
I've already seen it.
All right. Are you saying that in the condition that Mr. Alexander is in exhibit number 162, you were there, it's your opinion that he, in that condition, could move the camera?
I'm not saying that.
So you did move the camera, right?
Again, objection. Argumentative. She's already said she doesn't know what happened afterwards.
Overruled.
I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, that was so interesting, that whole... I mean, Jodi Arias got on the stand, and she was up there for days and days. I mean, God, it seems like 3 weeks. I mean, just being grilled left and right, and she was so proud of herself, because sometimes she would catch Juan Martinez messing up. But here is that same exhibit, 162, and Juan Martinez put out a book, and you can see it a little bit better. I found a better screenshot back then, and so you can see it a little bit better there. You can see his foot. It's really tiny on the right there with the big toe and that space between, and there's his head right there, and her jeans and a black sock. And if you look down here, there's that little squiggly mark that we used to call it, because on the tile there was a reoccurring instances of that squiggly mark. It wasn't really a great tiling job, because in some instances it continues that same exact look 2 or 3 tiles in a row instead of rotating it. And there is audio on the video that I put out a long time ago. It's not online currently. And so if you look right there, you can see the blood coming over and the head, and then his arm, looks like his right arm is up in the air. Now, is she holding his arms and is she dragging him at this point? It's hard to say, because he eventually makes it further down the hall to the carpet, because that is where apparently she inflicted the neck wound, almost cutting off his head, really. And this is at 5:32:16 p.m. Now there are jeans right there. Those are that's her sock. And right there, that looks like blood coming over his shoulder. Now, that easily could have been done by a gunshot wound to the head, which he did get, and it went through his nasal cavity, and that could be dripping out over his shoulder right there. That doesn't have to be where he's already been cut on the neck. And these photos were taken with a Sony Cyber Shot, and the camera was actually upside down on the ground, and just by nudging the camera, it could snap a photograph, and these photographs were taken upside down. And I'm rotating it so that the grout lines are perpendicular to the ground, or parallel to the ground, and even to the way that you're looking at it, so it's just straight up and down. Now here is the image that was in the book by Juan Martinez. Look at how clear this thing is. So I'm also rotating it where the grout line is parallel to the ground. And now you can easily see his foot back there. You can see the sink area in the bathroom. And it's really cool because if you look, notice how you can see everything that's in the crime scene photographs, even the photographs on the wall that are framed. See that? They're in that image by Juan Martinez, and the window, and they're right there. I changed the contrast up a little bit so you could actually see what was in these images. And you see a little bit of the mirror right there on both of them. And then there are the hinges of the door that you can see. There's a little opening in the door. The angle is wide angle, so it distorts the shape of the shadow underneath the door there. And there is even the door stop, it looks like, right there. See this squiggly mark right there? Look at these tiles. You can see it right here, right in that same spot. Each tile, not every tile, but a lot of the tiles have that same squiggly mark, and it's actually rotated so it's a little bit thinner looking. But look at, you can see that A and B and C here all have the exact same tile orientation, and you can look over here, it's even on this one. So the tiling person should have been rotating them to make it look a little bit better, but thankfully he didn't, because, well, it made it a little bit harder to determine. But you can see her foot is in the tile outside of the grout line of the squiggly mark. So it's in that one. I determined that her foot was in that third tile right there next to tile B. And this is what it looked like. Goes tile B, and I think this is exactly the shot right here. If you go down to the ground view, and now you put back in the Juan Martinez photograph, it's almost absolutely perfect now. And if you look right here on the ground, see how it's really shiny right there? So that's likely blood. Notice how it's not quite as shiny over here, even though there is a shine to it. Look at this, right there to here, that's likely blood on the ground because it's almost a liquid. And I think that absolutely proved exactly where that photograph was taken in the bathroom. They never really said at trial where that was. Now, I believe in the Jodi Arias case that the gunshot was first. And as a matter of fact, I don't just believe it. I know it was first. Law enforcement, even the prosecution believed it was first for a year and a half, and then they changed it when Jodi Arias changed her, went to self-defense. So these are the photographs that were taken. I think that those are one of the last couple photographs of Travis right there. And I think Jodi was standing right next to him with her pistol. She had a 25 caliber, one of those really tiny pistols, and I think she shot him right in the head, right there, in the bathroom, and as she was taking photographs. So she stood up and then shot him, because we see him in a photograph in this position, and he's still alive. All right, now the bullet, even at trial, they said on the autopsy that they weren't able to determine that the bullet hit the brain. He changed it later to say it had to have hit the brain because of the trajectory. But when he examined the brain, even though it was slightly autolyzed or decomposed, he was able to tell that the bullet had not went through the brain. And there it is right there, but the angle is really at a sharp angle. He said that Travis said would not have been fatal. The gunshot wound would have possibly disabled him temporarily. That's what they said originally in the autopsy, or the supplemental report that Detective Flores had. It was determined to be a homicide, and this is Kevin Horn who signed this. The wound track traverses the right anterior fossa without gross evidence of significant intracranial hemorrhage or apparent cerebral injury, although examination of the brain tissue was somewhat limited by decomposition. So that just means it was somewhat limited. So it's actually in the cheek. So look at the angle. If you remember before, it was the entry wound was above his right eye in the forehead. And you can see right there, that's where it entered and ended, right down there. And look at that, it's right like that. And it's right in front, and it goes through the nasal cavity. And at trial, I remember Kevin Horn saying, "You couldn't even examine the brain. It was liquid." And then he had to backtrack once he realized he did serial cross-sections. Dura mater, the tough fibrous membrane that goes around the brain. And there it is right there. The dura mater was intact, and it says it on the autopsy. So that means a bullet did not go through it. However, when questioned about that, a juror actually asked the question. He said that it was a typo because they changed their theory from gunshot first. Yes, this part here is interesting. In the following intruder story told during the Flores interrogations, I'm speculating that Jodi tells half-truths to weave in a story that can match up forensically with the actual story. I believe the woman in Jodi's intruder story is actually Jodi, and Jodi is placing herself near Travis in the room from a third-person point of view. For the purpose of this video, I put together a montage of clips from the interrogation that showed Jodi referring to Travis still being alive and awake after the gunshot.
Here, on my knees, and his bathtub is right here, and I was taking him here, and I was just going through the pictures, and I heard this loud ring, and I don't really remember except Travis was screaming, putting my hand on his back, because he was on all four of his knees. He was like on his knees like this, doing something like this or something like, I don't know. And and Travis was screaming the whole time. He wasn't screaming like a girl, he was just like he was in pain. Like,
yes, I think all of this is true here.
Like he was like shocked, like, oh, you know. He wasn't really moving though, he was just staying kind of still on the floor.
Because he'd been shot at this time, right?
Yeah, but he was still alive.
He was shot, he was still alive. See, I totally believe that. And she knows he was still alive.
He was still conscious even. Like,
Still talking.
He wasn't talking or saying much, but I could tell he was breathing. He seemed like he was breathing calmly, I think. He wasn't like, he was just there. An earlier remembrance.
These are actual crime scene photos that I'm matching up with my 3D model that I made. So he was standing at the sink at one point, spitting up blood. And that right there, the bullet on the blood, is what prosecutors use to realize and say out loud to everybody that the gunshot wound was last and that the stabbing was first. But that bullet shell could have landed in that blood in a million different ways. There could have been blood there, and the bullet shell was on the ground near the shower, because this is just right there at that doorstop, right across from the shower, basically. And, you know, maybe a foot kicked it and it rolled over there after it, because he was standing next to the sink, looking at his wound in the mirror and spitting up blood. And then Jodi Arias returned with a knife and just went absolutely berserk on him. I stabbed him, I think, over like 23 times, something like that. And cut his throat all the way to the spine. I mean, just an absolute psycho. But they used this, that there was blood on the ground, therefore the bullet being there second. They switched their entire theory so it could be counter to Jodi Arias' version of events. Anyways, that case was absolutely really interesting. I mean, it went on for a long time. There was 2 different trials. The second trial was because they were basically a hung jury on the sentencing of death. It was like 11-1 for death. And in Arizona, for some reason, they get a second bite at the apple to go for the death penalty. So they did a full second trial trying to get the death penalty, and again, I think it ended up 11-1, something like that. All right. Well, thank you all very much for watching. Make sure to hit that like button. I would really appreciate it. But as you can see, I've been doing these models and animations for years. Again, thank you all very much for watching. And I'll see you guys soon. And as I always say, until next time, be safe out there.